As a goalkeeper, you're literally 10 seconds away from a major mistake. No matter how well you've played in that game, you make that one mistake, that's what everybody will remember. When the ball was coming over, I was thinking to myself, hit the bar. And I heard it hit the net. And then it's like, what's going to happen now? I came out of my net, Bex and Sven talking to me, but got no idea what they said to me.
Can we talk about the day that Arsene Wenger walked through the door?
Arsene who? His first week, he changed everything. And Arsene's encouraging him to pass it and play. And I'm like, wow. Never shouting, just little instructions every single game.
Never fear a storm.
Be ready to adapt.
The skill is staying true to ourselves.
Which of those three holds the best memory?
You're an I6 one, yeah. Because as much as it wasn't a successful tournament, it was, but we didn't win it. Do you know what I mean? It was special. You know, we went into that under massive pressure. You know, everybody wanting Gazza out the squad and all that sort of stuff. You know, it was there's quite a lot of pressure going around. But then we draw with Switzerland in the first game. You know, so that would even build it even more. And then we've got Scotland next. So yeah, it was a special tournament because for me, I felt the England team made England fans love England again. You know, because before it was a little bit volatile.
Yeah. And what do you think happened that made them love England again?
They just saw us like coming back from hardly, you know, like we went to Singapore and a certain Mr. Gascoigne decided to do the dentist chair.
Yeah.
And then all the pictures came out from that and the fallout from that wasn't very good, you know, so I don't think the country felt that we were preparing in the right way or whatever, but it was just added pressure, yeah.
Were you there that night in Singapore?
No. Do you know what? I would have been, and this is why I wasn't, so we played against a blooming dog and duck 11 in Singapore, you know, like, and beat them about 11-0 or whatever it was. You know, it was just, and then we got told we could have a night out because we were flying back the next day. So I go up to my room and I starts getting changed and that, and I'd just come out of the shower, I sat on the bed, put the telly on, and it was Arsenal against Sheffield Wednesday Cup final. I was like, I'll watch this for a little bit. And that was it. Bump.
What, you fell asleep?
I fell asleep, exactly. And then I woke up the next morning, like go down for breakfast, and I'm hearing about all the carnage that went on and all the fun as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's the interesting thing though, isn't it? I think the press picked up on that as a wholly negative thing.
Yes.
But in a team, I wonder whether actually, and you know, we can talk later as well about Arsenal because there was a lot of more recent criticism about the Tuesday Club and the drinking that went on. Mm-hmm. But I wonder what the value is in those moments actually for team spirit.
For players, I think it's massive, you know, because everybody gets together, you know, even like some, not with England, but like with Arsenal, like when you said about the Tuesday Club, you know, some of the Shire players, you know, they came along and it brings them into the squad. It brings them into the squad even more.
I want to talk a bit about Euro 96 because you talk about the pressure and the scrutiny that comes with playing for England. But I never felt that you felt that because the easy smile, the ponytail, the laugh, that's sort of like you almost looked like the calm member of those England squads to me.
Yeah, I was. Inside, there's a lot more going on than I was showing. You know, because as a goalkeeper, you're literally 10 seconds away from a major mistake. You know, and no matter how well you've played in that game, you make that one mistake, that's what everybody will remember. You know, and that happened a couple of times, like massive ones. But that's just the way I was. You know, I wasn't, when I was getting ready in the dressing room, I would be nice and calm. You know, Martin Keane, he used to say to me, like, if I felt myself getting too excited or whatever, he said, I'd just look over at you. And he says, you'd be there just like deadpan. You know, I was just concentrating. And he said, but that helped him.
Which mistake still hurts the most when you think back?
The Brazilian game, the Ronaldinho one. You know, because, and I still get asked today, you know, like, did he mean it? And I say, well, I know he didn't. I was told he didn't mean it straight after the game by Gilberto Silva, who was an Arsenal teammate, but playing for Brazil.
Yeah.
And I said, but it doesn't matter. He still went in from like 35, 40 yards, you know, and that for me is a goalkeeping mistake, no matter what happens, you know. But, you know, the fact that I went to go to my right, then changed it to my left, blocked out, and I couldn't move.
What was going on then?
do you know what? When the ball was coming over, I was thinking to myself, hit the bar, because I knew I wasn't getting it. I know I wasn't going to get anywhere near it, and I just wanted to hear the sound of it hit the bar, and I heard it hit the net, and I was like, shit, yeah, and then we've still got half an hour to go, right? So I'm on the pitch now, and I'm thinking to myself, am I going to get treated like Beckham did in '98 if this scoreline stays the same? That's on the pitch.
Oh my goodness. You're thinking that during the game?
Yeah.
And how do you balance that with actually then having to do your job?
I found it hard, but I did it. But I was aware that I was like really nervous, after that, and there was a couple of times where, I found myself thinking, I've got to go and get that cross, that wasn't mine. You know what I mean? So it totally goes against what I always used to preach to other goalkeepers and what I used to do myself. Once you made a mistake, try and relax a little bit and then build it step by step. By doing little things, because if you start thinking that you've got to go and make a save or you've got to go and get that cross, you might make another mistake.
Yeah.
So I was aware of that in the game. And then, obviously, they go down, Ronaldinho himself gets sent off. They go down to 10 men and we still don't equalise. And then it's like, shit, what's going to happen now? And that's why when I came out of my net, and I've seen pictures of like Bex and Sven talking to me, and Ray Clemens, and I've got no idea what they said to me.
On the pitch, on the full-time whistle?
After the full-time whistle, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is I saw Ashley Cole recently talk about that when he came out of the dressing room after that he said the press were salivating and did want to have your head on a stick, and he spoke up for you to them, and he felt that came at a cost to him in terms of his own relationship with the press afterwards.
Because I was sat next to him at the Champions League Cup final.
Right.
And I've stuck up for Ashley before, like when he left Arsenal, and I've always told the truth of, what I knew then, and he's always, like he stuck up for me as well, and he said that the press were like almost like laughing a little bit at me, because I remember going into a press conference afterwards and I could not hold it together. I just kept crying because I was too emotional, and because even when the final whistle went, and like I said, when Sven and Bex came to me, I then went to the England fans, and it just I was like, oh God, just that feeling of letting everyone down. That's what it felt like. Then all that emotion comes out.
We'll stay where you are, because in a moment David's going to explain how nervous he was returning to England after his Ronaldinho mistake. But then what happened that almost moved him to tears?
So I'm now going back on the plane, and I'm still thinking like, oh God, what am I going to get treated like? Got off the plane at Heathrow, and there was like thousands of fans there, and a load of them started singing my name. Because I'd had a good tournament, which gets forgotten about. I'd played well. And even in the Brazil game, I'd done well. Yeah. But there's a mistake there that everybody remembers. But then when everybody started singing my name, honestly, it was like such a relief.
Really? I think you get a bit moved even now thinking about it.
Because that's like a moment in time where you don't know what's going to happen. I saw what happened to Bex. Totally unjustifiable and horrible at times. Not just like the stuff we saw, the stuff like when he's just walking in the street and things.
Yeah.
All that goes through your head when I landed. And I remember I'd got my son Robbie on my arm, and he'd be 2? But then people started singing my name, and it was like massive relief.
Did you have a tear?
No, I don't think I did. Not then. I'd shed enough before that, trust me.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. What, after the mistake?
After the game, like I said, like on the pitch, in the press conference afterwards, I tried to do that, couldn't do it. Then we get back on the coach, we go to the hotel where all the fans, all your family are waiting for you there as well. It's just this, just a feeling of letting everybody down.
But what's that like though for like a Rotherham lad that's almost been trained to keep your emotions bottled up? You don't let the world see. But that was what's going on in there.
That was uncontrollable. Because like you say, I'm trying to fight it. I'm trying to not cry. I'm a 6'4" Yorkshireman.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And your generation doesn't show emotions like that. So but then how did it leave you feeling?
It just comes out, and then you just feel, don't know, I just vulnerable, I think. And then, you know, I'd got people around me there that looked after me, and you know, it was just, I couldn't control that. It was just emotion that just came out.
I remember on Harry's Heroes, the TV show that you did, when Paul Merson broke down in tears on that show, and I thought, in a similar way, I thought that was a really powerful show of vulnerability from him.
Exactly.
Were you expecting that?
No, I was shocked when he came out, because it was like, when I saw the clip of him, you know, in the taxi and that, it was just like, oh, I didn't realise that he was back to these, you know, to the old ways of, you know, his gambling, and you know, I don't know whether he was drinking, but it was his gambling that was causing the most damage. You know, and seeing him being like that again really shocked me. You know, and then seeing Razor Ruddock, you know, and then Merce having a real ding dong at breakfast. Yeah. You know, because I was there for that. Me and my wife Frankie were there for that, and it was 10 times worse than what we saw on TV. You know, it was really bad. You know, and I was like I didn't know like who to try and help. You know, because Mercer's my mate, and Razor needs help. Yeah. You know, so that was a real tough time. You know, but then that's different. That's not like emotion for me. That's to go and try and help someone.
But what have you learned being in sort of dressing room environments about being able to spot when somebody maybe can't articulate they need help, but you can see all the signs? What are they?
Yeah, they stop talking. You know, they go into like a shell, and then I felt that I was good at spotting that. You know, and I always made a point of new lads that came into the squad, especially England and things, you know, like when Bex came in, I went over to him and shook his hand and said, welcome to the squad, all that. And he's told that story before, you know, but it was just something that I did with everybody. I remember how I felt when I first went into my first England squad, which was like back in 87, something like that. You know, I'm like playing a training with people like Brian Robson and Glenn Hoddle and Viv Anderson, Peter Shilton. Yeah. You know, and I was like, oh my God. You know, and you go in there and you just think like, I'll never get to that standard.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. You know, because like they're like way ahead of you. Of course they're going to be, because they're older and they're more experienced. But when you're actually training with them, you're all on the same level. You know, I remember getting chipped by Glenn and I never saw it coming. You know, like he was only like 10 yards out and I was ready for a hard, low shot. And he went chip and it went, I was like, I never saw that coming. I was like, oh my God, what sort of standard is this?
Really?
Yeah.
Here at High Performance, we are fascinated by marginal gains, and nowhere is it clearer than in Formula One, where performance comes down to visibility, precision and speed. Because when decisions need to happen fast, the teams performing at the highest level have to see everything clearly in real time. And honestly, I think managing a growing business isn't actually that different. When you're managing team spending across markets with travel, suppliers, multiple currencies, small inefficiencies can quickly add up. And that's why here at High Performance, we partner with Revolut Business, because their spend and expense management tools give you real-time visibility and control across your business, from company cards and approvals to tracking team spending as it happens. So instead of getting buried in admin or outdated systems, you can stay focused on growing your business. And right now, High Performance listeners can get a £200 welcome bonus when you sign up through our link in the description by 30th of September 2026. Subscription fees and T's and C's apply. When you think about winning, it's easy to picture one person, one moment, one clear result, something immediate, something obvious. But here on High Performance, the more we dive into conversations, the more we realise that actually the most meaningful wins don't always look like that. Sometimes it's someone getting help when they need it. Maybe a family finding support when they've got nowhere to turn, or a community project that gives people a sense of belonging and stability. These moments don't always make headlines, but they matter. And they happen because of postcode lottery players. Together, they've raised over 1.7 billion for charities and good causes, funding the programs that keep showing up day after day, helping people when they need it most. It's a different kind of win. It's not just about the individual. It's about communities winning together. It's about creating real, lasting impact. This is powering hope together. And it's happening because you're part of it. To see how you playing is making a difference, click the link in the description and learn more about how powering hope together is creating shared wins, one moment at a time. Postcode Lottery manages lotteries for 20 charities. A minimum of 30% of each ticket price goes to charity. 18 plus, conditions apply, not available in Northern Ireland. What's interesting though about the life that you've lived is you know 75 caps for England, you won the League 3 times, 4 FA Cups, European trophy, like all these amazing, great moments. You know, you're a genuine legend of the English game. Yet the first thing you think of when you turn around and look at your shirts is, a couple of bad moments.
Yeah,
Why
I know
is that?
you do. I don't know. Well, because obviously it's England. Yeah. You know, we'll talk about that one later. But the England situation is that never won anything for England. You know, and I go along with a lot of players now. You know, obviously since 1966, and that's like a regret, if you know what I mean. You know, because I know how much football means to this country. I know how much it means to the fans. You know, I saw it in Euro 96, you know, and I've seen it in other tournaments, you know, getting to the final at Wembley and all that sort of stuff. And I want to be around when England wins something because I think it's going to be epic.
Did you believe in those squads you were involved in that you would win a trophy for England?
Yeah, the 98 squad was really good. The 96 squad was like a rebuild of, you know, because we hadn't qualified for USA in 94.
Yeah.
You know, so then Terry came in. Terry was just like so good. You know, every box he ticked. Yeah. Man management, tactical, motivation, just looking at him. You know, he was just he's a proper manager and you know, and he knew how to look after players. But even to the fact when because obviously we didn't have to qualify. So we were playing friendlies before the tournament. And every get-together, we would watch videos of Holland. And we're like, why Holland? It's like, at some stage, we will play against Holland. And look at what the score, you know, look at the performance.
Yeah, and he'd identified that early on.
Yeah, he said, because Holland have set the bar high. You know, they are more like the team to beat. You know, them and Germany, obviously. But the Holland were yeah.
Could you give us an example then of Terry's man management? Because, as you know, I've spent years working in football, and so many England players of your generation say Terry Venables was the man on every level. Yeah. I'd love an example of why.
Just the motivational side of it, of him saying, you know, come on, do it for the badge. You know, which when you flip that and you look, and you know, my experience of a foreign manager was Sven, absolutely miles apart. You know, as in I didn't get it from Sven. I got so much from Terry and Glenn as well, you know, Glenn Hoddle. But Terry was just, he knew everything. He knew when to, even like sometimes we'd be in the hotel. We'd been together for like quite a few weeks. And he'd go to me like, David, take him fishing. He's getting on my nerves. Being Mr. Gascoigne. You know, so then I would have to take him fishing and look after him and everything. But, you know, but he knew when for me to go and look after Gazza a bit, you know, because he knew that Gazza was such an important player of the squad, you know, but he's not easy to look after, you know, and he knew that about everybody. He knew everybody's character.
Yeah. And what was the secret to helping Paul be the best he could be?
Keeping him happy, you know, and not, you know, I've known Gazza for a long time, and I've seen a lot of sides to him, you know, and some mad sides and some downsides, you know, but underneath all that, he's got a heart of gold, you know, and he would do anything for you. And, you know, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, you know, when I used to take him fishing, he'd mess about a little bit, but he loved his fishing. You know, his passion for fishing was massive. You know, he bought then, and we would always fly fish because he can cast a really good line. But he'd be changing his fly like so many times because he'd cast it out a couple of times. Oh, that's not working. And he'd take it off. His fly was out of the water more than it was in it because he was too busy trying to tie a new one on. You know, but he just loved it. He was so passionate about it.
But no patience. Didn't have a patience for a fisherman.
No, he. I've took him. So I've done some filming with him since. You know, and made sure that he was all right. You know, because he's still got his difficulties. And we went, and you know, he absolutely loved it. And we were carp fishing. You know, and I said to the producers at the time, and Ali Hamidi, I was like, right. I said, I want people to see the side of Gazza that I know. Not the one that you know and that you try and get going and, you know, make him do silly things and that. And he was like, oh, okay. And like during the shoot, I was always aware of like, whoa, calming, like making sure that people saw that side of Gazza, and he had a really good time. He does. He just absolutely loves his fishing.
And when you were on the riverbank, that's quite a contrast to the sort of the harsh environment I imagine many football dressing rooms are. Did Paul ever open up or reveal a little bit of some of the troubles or the vulnerabilities he was experiencing?
The worst that I saw was when he got left out of the squad in '98. That was, I saw a man that was destroyed because he loved England so much, and it was such a shock to him, and it was a shock to us, to the squad as well.
Yeah.
Because we always knew how good he could be, and we knew that. Well, some of the players they knew they couldn't create what Gazza could create, and so the fact that he's totally out of the squad was a massive blow. But I saw him, trying to organise his own plane, and because he was so devastated, and he didn't want to go back on the FA plane and all that, and then having arguments with Glenn, and then throwing flowers and damaging the hotel and all that sort of thing. But this was just a man that was devastated by the news that he wasn't going to be in a World Cup.
And could you do anything in that moment?
I was with him. I was trying to sort him out, and we were trying to get him. There were me and Paulins. We were trying to get him on the plane because the other lads were going to go on it, and we just felt it was the best thing that he got on the FA plane, and eventually calming him down and packing his bags for him, and horrible things when you think about it. The fact that I'm packing Paul Gascoigne's bag to get him out of a World Cup, and. Yeah, it was just. We eventually we did it. We got him on the plane, but he was a broken man then.
But you definitely played in an era where showing weakness or vulnerability wouldn't have been the norm, right?
Yeah, true.
How hard is that when you're a fully rounded person with challenges and doubts and fears, but you can't show any of this at work? How does that manifest itself?
I was lucky because I didn't really have. That many. There was more highs than there were downtimes. The two downtimes I call it that I had in football was obviously the 9 goal in the Cup Winners' Cup final right at the end, and then the Brazil goal. They were two real big negative times in my life.
I always think that game where the Brazil game where it was Martin Keown famously said we needed Churchill and we got Ian Duncan Smith. Somebody that was more cerebral and thoughtful, and yet that was used as a stick to beat Sven with.
Yeah.
Afterwards, what was your perception of it?
Yeah, I didn't get it with Sven because it was, I had my managers were Bobby Robson, Graham Taylor, Kevin Keegan, Terry, Glenn, and then Sven comes in, and it was just when he's, do it for England or do it for the badge or. Just didn't seem to have the same meaning.
Right.
Because he was foreign, do you think?
Yeah. And I don't know why, but that's the way that I felt, and it just didn't have the same, you didn't get the same motivation from it, from when, especially Terry, Terry was so good at that.
Yeah.
But Sven, to be fair to him, tactically, he was very, very good, and got us to a lot of tournaments.
Yeah.
But by, 2002, so I played in the World Cup, came back, and I think I played about 2 or 3 more games for England, and then he gave me the good old phone call. I'm leaving you out the squad. I'm going to go with David James.
And when the England manager rings you and says, "That's it," do you try and fight? Do you try and convince them otherwise? No,
not for me. No, once he's made that decision, you ain't going to change it. And even if you try and change him. Be what you say to him. He's already had that thought, so it's going to be, he's got negative thoughts about you. So it's, for me, I was like, okay.
It's strange though, isn't it? Because you play your last, when people go, oh, one day you pick up your kid for the last time and you don't know it's the last time you'll ever pick your kid up.
Yeah.
You didn't know it was the last time you were going to play for England.
No.
So you go through these moments and you treat them like every other moment.
Yeah.
And you don't get the goodbye.
No.
A bit like the Arsene Wenger phone call towards the end of your Arsenal career. Did you see that coming?
A little bit, yeah. Because there was a game at Southampton. I don't know can't remember who it was against, but I let a corner in direct, and I was like, "Oh, this is not good." And I think we drew or got beat, and then I knew that I wasn't on form.
Yeah.
With England. And I knew that plus the World Cup, with that mistake, and now this, I was like, yeah, this could be.
Still to come, David explains how Arsene Wenger transformed Arsenal and changed one very specific thing. Can we talk about the day that Arsene Wenger walked through the door?
Ooh. Yeah. Arsene who? That's what he was like, honestly. We'd no idea what he was like. And then he walked and we were like, that's our manager. Because he looked like some sort of like a professor coming out of university.
Yeah. He had the round glasses. He was really thin, oversized suit, wasn't it?
I know, and we were like, wow. And then, his first week, he changed everything. The way that we were training. Because like before that, we'd had George Graham, then we had Bruce Riot for a little while. But the training totally changed.
In what way?
As in we were playing football, like with balls, like pre-season, like not a lot of running, just laps or anything like that. Yeah. It's what I call disguised running, because you've got a ball with you and all that, like, oh yeah, this is great. But then they're just as tired as before. But yeah, technique-wise, I'm passing it, not passing it, I'm giving it to Tony Adams on the edge of the box, and Arsene's encouraging him to pass it and play, and I'm like, wow. And I'm like, you can't do it.
but he did. Like, you're making references there to like the glasses and this professorial air that he came in with, and I'm interested, like in today's environment, take an example like Liam Rosenior recently at Chelsea, where very quickly you heard that people were calling him the supply teacher. They were sort of making fun of the way that he carried himself, and yet you're describing that Wenger was carrying himself in a very different way than the usual environment. What was it that Wenger did that got you as a cynical group of blokes to buy into it?
Yeah. So the first thing was the way that we trained, like I say, like with the ball, and the intensity of the training and quality of the training that was expected was so high.
Right.
And he was always watching. He didn't like say a lot in training, but he was always watching. He'd just shout the odd instruction. Then he'd go back, and then he'd have like Pat Rice and Borrow, who was his number 2 that nobody hardly ever saw.
Right.
And he was always like up in the stand, and he'd come down at half time and chat with Arsene. And then just his passion of always wanting to watch football. And then the players that he brought in. So he brought in this new way of, this nutrition side of it.
Yeah.
And, it was like water, like room temperature water, no fizzy water at all.
See, I remember working in 2012 at the Euros, the Ukraine and Poland Euros,
right,
with Martin Keown.
Yeah.
And we were drinking fizzy water in the stadium. And he'd been retired probably 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And he went, quickly hid his water. I said, what are you doing? He goes, Arsene's here. He would, honestly,
but
he goes, you hate me drinking fizzy water. He says it dehydrates us.
Yeah.
I'm like, mate, you're retired.
Yeah. I never drink fizzy water. Okay, I'll have it cold. Yeah. We weren't even allowed to have it cold. It had to be like room temperature. And then obviously like the amount of food that we would eat. And we were watching, but the way that he did it was really good, and the way he managed it was brilliant, because he had like Anelka, like Vieira, Grimondi, Remy Gard, and then Manu Petit came in, and they were already on this diet. Right. They knew about the diet, and they were eating like mounds of food before games. And the lads are like looking, it's different for me because I don't run around much, and so I was on. It's different, but the outfield players are like, are they going to be able to run around with that much food in them? And they did, and they never stopped. And then the lads are like, oh, so then they start trying it. For instance, my pre-match meal normally was ham and cheese omelette with beans. Like Righty would have a fillet steak with a fried egg on top. like 3 hours before, so it just totally changed, with all this pasta and boiled fish and boiled chicken and boiled veg and zero fat yogurts and crudities and all this sort, like a massive mixture of food, and you had to eat a lot of it as well.
And that doesn't work, right? Unless you also get results.
Yeah,
exactly.
He won his first game, didn't he? 2-0 from memory.
I can't remember. Yeah.
But I think winning, it's so important for him to have started winning games, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that makes it. If you're happy to do anything if you're going to win matches and win trophies.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, but the buzz was different. It was like a real positive buzz because we knew we were like, because I'm watching players now playing the ball and passing, and they've hardly done it before.
Right.
And they were enjoying it. So then they're enjoying training, and then that's transferring to the games. And then we're looking at the players that are coming in. Like Nicholas Anelka, I'm telling you now, was off the charts good when he first came to Arsenal.
And he was 17.
Yeah. He didn't speak much English.
His French was pretty good.
His right foot was better.
Yeah. Well, you were on the receiving end of it probably in training.
And I remember being in training and I think it was Tony and Baldy were like playing against him and he was like embarrassing them a little bit and then they started trying to kick him and they still couldn't get him. Honestly, he was so good. And then you've got like Patrick Vieira and people like that came in and, you know, just the quality of the players that was there.
Yeah.
But the standard in training was so high and expectation in training.
But I think like you're alluding to people like Tony or Steve Bold and some of those characters. I'm interested if you tell us a little bit about what preceded Arsene coming in and tell us about the Tuesday Club. Yeah.
So the Tuesday Club was us having a few drinks on a Tuesday afternoon / night.
Yeah.
But it was always done, and George knew about this because it was back in the day when you didn't play as many games. So Wednesday was off. And so we would go to Highbury and George was giving us a real physical session because he knew we were going out, you know, and then we would go out, we'd have Wednesday off, back in training on Thursday. But it was just, we would go to the races or we'd go into London or wherever, you know, and then just have a good bit of fun. But like everybody.
Because this is the bit that I think we often, so given Paul Merson's struggles in the years afterwards, or Tony Adams has spoke about it, I think we often then decry what those Tuesday Club sessions became. But actually, there was an awful lot of benefits from them as well. Yeah,
there was, you know, because of team bonding thing, you know, and it got everybody together, you know, and you didn't always have to go, you know, and people would like miss one, go to the next one, and you know, and it just had so much fun, you know, and it was back in the day where there weren't so many mobile phones or there weren't mobile phones with cameras on them, you know, so we could have a laugh, you know, and we get away with it. But, you know, for the team, I just felt it was so good that, you know, because everybody would come in and have a good, like a release, I suppose, on a Tuesday.
And what about, like, were issues sorted out there as well, the kind of thing? Like, I've heard Brian Robson, and I was going to ask you about his role as Terry Venables' assistant later, but Brian Robson spoken really powerfully about how often disputes or little niggles would get resolved in these kind of social sessions that maybe wouldn't have done in a dressing room environment.
Yeah, a little bit. We didn't talk a lot about football, though.
Right.
You know, it was just about going out and having a laugh, you know, or if somebody had a bad game or something, there'd be a little bit of Mickey taking.
Yeah.
You know, and then that like brings it out and it's like, oh, come on, like next game. You know, that it was that sort of vibe about it. It was never really, I can't remember as getting into trouble, you know, like with scuffles or anything like that. It was just mainly like good fun.
And so did Arsene then ban Tuesday Club when he became the manager?
No, he didn't ban it. But the fact was that because we started playing more games now, that the Wednesday was hardly ever off.
Right.
And then the other thing is that if you'd had a few the night before and you turned up in training, you stood out like a sore thumb.
Because it was so intense.
Most of the other ones weren't on it.
Right.
They had not had a drink and it was so intense. So it just like slowly faded out. But he didn't say, right, no drinking or anything like that, you know, because even like straight after a game, you know, we'd be like straight to the bar and have a few beers and then get back on the coach, you know, and then, you know, and he knew exactly what we were doing, but he managed it so well that it didn't like upset us that way, you know, because I hear of like managers coming in and like banning red sauce and all that, you know, all these sort of normal things that we do, you know, banning them straight away, which then causes a rift straight away. Arsene didn't do anything like that to cause any rifts at all, because he wasn't a guy that liked confrontation, like one-on-one confrontation. He didn't like that, even to the point where if he named a team on a Saturday, say at like 1:30, he'd flip up the first page of the flipboard and like, he would be there. And then the players that weren't involved, straight after the meeting, they'd be like, oh, boss, can I have a word? No, I'll see you Monday. And then he would avoid them Monday. Just hated it. Yeah, he didn't want to do it. Yeah.
Because anyone I've spoken to that played under him, they talk about how inspired they were to play for him. What did he do with you to give you the confidence to know that you were the number one and what he expected from you in a game? He
was wise because don't forget, I was 26 when I joined Arsenal. So so that was 90, and Arsene came in, 96?
Yeah.
So I'd had 6 years at Arsenal as number one. And that's 7 years now with Bob Wilson, my coach, because he used to come to QPR before I signed for Arsenal. So Bob was like my guy that I spoke to and listened to. And Arsene worked that out really quickly. So he would go to Bob rather than coming to me, and he wouldn't. But Arsene was like, he would never like blame anybody. For instance, at half time, I don't know whether you know this, but at half time when we went in, it was total silence in the dressing room. Purposely. And you went in, you got your drinks, you got your energy bars or whatever you used to have at half time, and you sat down and you didn't even speak to the guy next to you, you just waited. You were just quiet and quiet and quiet. And then Arsene would say, the last 2 or 3 minutes before we went out, he would say his little bit, never shouting, just little instructions, back out. Every single game.
And why was it so quiet then? Why were players not...
He didn't like players having a go at each other at half time.
So that was an instruction from him?
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, even once when we were losing at half time at Highbury and Pat Rice came in first and he started having a go at a couple of the lads. And in front of all of us, Arsene just turned around and went, Pat, sit down and be quiet. And we were like, it's almost like being at school. You're like,
he's had a go at Pat.
So that was the sort of silence that he was after. And the only time that I saw him lose it was at we played at Man United and we were 5 down, I think, at half time. And he came in and he got his water bottle in his hand and in his French accent, he slammed it down in the middle of the dressing room and in his French accent he went, "This is not unacceptable." But in his French accent, it didn't sound right. So I'm like, oh. And then as I look up, I see Ray Parlour and Ray's going. So it was one of those like naughty schoolboy moments where you daren't look at each other because it was, you shouldn't be laughing, but the way it sounded, and that's the only time I've ever seen him lose it.
But can you think of a time when in that 3 minutes where he comes in at the end of a silent dressing room that he said something that was profound that subsequently changed the game?
No, because it was always tactical. It wasn't motivational.
Okay.
It was always tactical, and it was always about us. Like pre-match, we never did anything on the opposition. Only we did set pieces, where we stand for set pieces. If they did something a little bit different, he'd highlight it. And that would be it. We hardly did any research on the away team.
Really?
Yeah.
So where did that? Sorry.
So that builds a confidence in us.
Yeah.
Because he always used to say, because if we play well, we win. That was his confidence. Even to the point when he went to the Birmingham press, I think it was the year or 2 years before the Invincibles. He said it. He said we could go unbeaten this season. And we were like, oh, thanks for that pressure. But he believed it.
He knew.
Yeah.
Wow, so interesting. So would he ever do like a Fergie type Churchillian like rousing speech?
Never. I never saw that from him at all.
Not once.
Not once.
Even before a major final.
No. He would like as you're going out before, like when he would just say the tactical side of it and everything. It'd be like, and then it would be like, right, come on, let's go. And then as he said that, we were like, come on, lads, and he'd be like, come on, and that was it. The high was always there. Right up to my last game for Arsenal. My last game for Arsenal, I win the FA Cup as captain. So I'm like on the pitch, I lifted the trophy, got my captain's armband on and everything. And then I go to Portugal. I was on a year-to-year contract. And Arsene would phone me up. He says, right, I've got an offer for you. I was like, okay, what you got? He went, I want you to be my number 3 goalkeeper. I was like, oof. This is what...
You've just won the FA Cup?
Just won the FA Cup. And I was captain because Patrick Vieira was injured. And then he said, but I want you to be my goalkeeping coach. I was like, oh, okay, it's something that I'm thinking about because Bob Wilson, my coach, was retiring.
Yeah.
And he's been my coach for 15 years. And then he went, but there's a 75% wage drop. And I just started laughing. I said, boss, you know what I'm going to do? I said, I still feel I can play at least another year. And I've got offers on the table. So, and that's why I went to Man City.
And did you try and negotiate with Arsene and try and stay at Arsenal?
No, that's a message. And he's done that with other big players before. You know, it's an offer that it is an offer, but it's a little offer. You know, and it's. I think it was my sign to think, well, yeah, my time at Arsenal is over.
And City had already made contact?
Yeah, City, Birmingham. I spoke to Steve Bruce. You know, so I'd got a choice of either going back to Birmingham, where I was rebuilding my career, or going to Man City. But Man City were in the Premier League; they offered me the same money. Yeah, so that was it was quite an easy decision. But then when I went to City, it was like, whoa, you know, because then you realise how good Arsenal are and how good they are in every aspect of football.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So take us to the almost the first realisation that things were different at City at that time.
So, like, for instance, it was Kevin Keegan that was manager, you know, and he got Arthur Cox, Derek Fazackley, Pete Bennett and Stuart Pearce were his backroom staff. You know, apart from Pearcey, they're all old school.
Yeah.
You know, so even down to the point of like meeting for the first game, like what time are we meeting? You know, I'm thinking, are we in the hotel the night before, or are we hotel in the morning, which is exactly what I did with Arsenal. And I'll meet at 1:30 for a 3 o'clock kickoff. I was like, what? I was like, what about food? You know, because with Arsene, we always ate at like 3 hours before kickoff, like a massive meal. And he was like, and Kevin was like, no. He says, trust the lads. He says, I'm sure they'll eat properly. And I'm like, they're footballers. I said, like, half of them are on their own. You know, so
quick McDonald's on the way.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, so it was, you know, that side of it was a shock. And then weirdly, like my back four were like the two centre-halves were two Frenchmen that didn't speak much English. I think my right back was Chinese guy, and my left back was Russian or Ukrainian. And there wasn't a lot of English spoken that back four, you know, and then me having to try and get some sort of communication to him in a match. You know, all right, we did it in training as well, but it's slower.
And do you think that impacted performance?
A little bit, only on certain bits, you know, like man on, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, how quick does that translate to him? By the time it has done, he's right on.
Yeah.
You know what?
The man is on.
Yeah.
You know, 46% of people have hidden cardiovascular risk that they have no idea about. That's what Do Health have found. But thankfully, I'm not one of them. And I only know this because I recently took the Do Health blood test. People in my family have had issues with their heart in the past.
So my results showed that my ApoB is optimal. So ApoB estimates the amount of cholesterol-carrying particles moving around your body. The more you have, the more chance there is for cholesterol to settle. The good news is mine's optimal.
But I also love the fact that I've now been given a plan from Do Health. So I need to drink more water, I need to take more steps, and I really need to focus on my sleep so that I know in 4 months when I take the test again, hopefully my stats and my data will have improved. This is all about getting in front of health, not reacting to it. If you're interested, check out dohealth.co/high performance and use the code high performance and see what's really going on inside your body. This episode of High Performance is brought to you by Bulldog Skincare. On this show, we focus a lot on the strive to achieve greatness. And one thing that comes up time and time again during those conversations is the importance of doing the right things every day. It's not about those moments that everyone sees. It's about the small things. And Bulldog Skincare know this all too well, which is why they make quality skincare products for men, combining brilliant natural origin ingredients with carefully selected man-made ingredients designed to help you look and feel your best. From training to the trials of everyday life, Bulldog Skincare are supporting everyday skin endurance. In fact, Bulldog are so committed to helping men with their everyday endurance, they're proud to be the official men's skincare partner of Ironman Europe. Bulldog products, from moisturizers to shower gels, are all about helping you prepare, protect, and recover skin from whatever life throws at you, whether you're pushing yourself to the limit in an Ironman competition or just managing the day-to-day. Bulldog Skincare supports your everyday endurance. Find Bulldog Skincare in major retailers and online. Bulldog Skincare understands men.
We sat down once with Petr Cech, who told us that he learnt Spanish to be able to tell the Spanish defenders quickly, because he realised that actually that's a real competitive advantage to be able to communicate. So how was your Chinese?
I won't be Russian. No, Yorkshire was good.
It must have been an interesting time that for you though, because that, as you say, your career was largely highs, right? You've had a really fortunate and excellent football career. There you are, playing in an FA Cup final. 6 months later, you're at a club with different values, a manager with a different approach, a back four with different communication abilities, and you get injured that season, didn't you?
Yeah.
You got that nasty injury, which pretty much ended your career.
It went, so I was playing for Man City away at Wolves, and the ball's down the other end, and I'm in the goal, and I was like, and I'd never had this feeling before, and people had said to me, like, you'll get a sign when you know it's time to retire. Right. And I was in goal, and I just, in my head, I just went, what am I doing here? Don't know why, but it just came in, and I was like, oh, that's my sign.
Was it scary or weird or?
It was weird, but do you know what? I was ready. I was ready to retire, because I'd have been 40 then. Yeah. Yeah. So I knew it was coming, and that's why I want to talk about that other shirt, because I made a certain save when I was 39. But, so then that night, I actually rented a ground floor apartment right next door to Kevin, because Kevin owned the apartment. He owned the 2 ground floor ones. So I went and seen him. I said, look, just to let you know, I'm going to retire in the summer, so then he could make plans to get another goalkeeper in. And he was like, oh, great. Not great, but he just said, oh, thanks a lot. And then 10 days later, we played away at Portsmouth, and I went down at, I think it was Yakubu, and I went down at his feet, and my knee stuck in the ground, and it flipped me forward a little bit. And as it did, his knee hit my shoulder. Total accident. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, and I had to come off. I couldn't carry on. And then I went for scans and x-rays, and they said, look, you've sprained your AC joint. You could start, there's a lot of wear and tear. Your shoulder could start dislocating. I was like, I'm ready to retire. And I had a chat with Kevin, and he said, look, I've got a chance of getting David James. And I said, get him, and I'll retire, and then that frees up a space in the squad. So it was as quick as that.
Yeah, but I think important that you'd already had that realisation a few games before that you were done. Yeah. I think it's a really painful, I used to work closely with Owen Hargreaves.
Right.
An injury robbed him, right? Yeah. Of some of the best years of his life. Won the Champions League at 18 with Bayern, won it again with United, and then the wrong things were done in his knees, and he never played football again. And then was pilloried and criticised by fans. And I think only now, I spoke to him recently, and he said that other players retiring who he played with was the best thing for him, because then he was back where he would have been. Right. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Whereas at least you didn't have your career taken before you were ready. It sounds like you...
Well, I nearly did it at 19. Obviously when I was at Leeds, I got released by Leeds United, like the team that I've always supported. So then I'm at that stage, I'm like, what am I going to do now? When one of your idols, Eddie Gray, tells you that they're letting you go.
What did he say to you that day?
He said, and this is just after, so I've got on my phone, I've got team photos of me in the first team photo of Leeds. I'm a Leeds fan. I was a boyhood schoolboy fan as well. So that picture meant so much to me. And then literally about a month later, I get told that I'm leaving.
And it was out of the blue. You had no idea.
I had no idea. Yeah, and he just came in because John Lukic was the first team goalkeeper. Yeah. It's so ironic that later on I'd go and take his job. But he was the first team goalkeeper, and it was me. And I was only 19, so that was, and I hadn't played for the first team. I'd only played in a couple of friendlies and things, so I could understand it a little bit. But he just said, look, we're letting you go, and I'm going to get an experienced goalkeeper in. And he brought back David Harvey.
Wow, right.
The old Leeds goalie. Yeah, I know. So then I'm like, so what do I do? What am I going to do now? He's told me that, I'm not good enough. They don't need me. And like a week passed, and I'm just at home thinking, what do I do? My mum and dad had a grocery shop that sold fresh bread and sandwiches and all that. And before, when this close season went, I'd go and help the local bread bakers to deliver the bread around Rotherham. And that was decent money. It was £5 a day. It was good, cash in hand.
Lovely.
And I'm thinking I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
Just like, I think he said lost, but I suppose I was in a little way, because I spent all that time trying to be a footballer, trying to be a professional. Well, I was a professional for 1 year.
Yeah.
I did apprenticeship at Leeds 2 years then, because they were like back then you signed schoolboy forms when you were 15. You're like, now they're signing up at 7 and 8 year olds.
Yeah.
But back then it was like you signed as a 15-year-old and then you're with the club. Then you sign your first contract when you're 16 if you're good enough. But I didn't sign any schoolboy forms because I wanted to go around all the other clubs just to have a look. But being a Leeds fan, it was as soon as they said yes, I was
Yeah.
yeah. So from that to then at 19, like not knowing what I was going to do, thinking delivering the bread or whatever. Then I got a call, or my dad got a call, saying that Peterborough had come in for me, and it worked out because Martin Wilkinson was one of the coaches at Leeds with, I think it was with Alan Clark, and they'd left. Alan got sacked, and then Martin had left, and he got the job at Peterborough. Found out that I'd been released, and he came in for me. I said to my dad, "Where's Peterborough?" Because I got no idea as a 19-year-old. Yeah.
Before we get into that, though, can I go back? Because, like, when I was reading about you, like, your background intrigues me. Your dad was a steel worker.
Mm-hmm. My mum worked in a bar.
Your mum works in the bar. They own this grocery store. I'm interested in what that environment, growing up in that environment, what did it give you that you could call on at moments when Eddie Gray's telling you that your career at Leeds is over?
I don't know what it gave me, but what did take over was the motivation of proving people wrong. That became my main focus, like all the way through, getting up to like the proudest feeling that I ever had in football was when I played in the World Cup in France '98. The first game, walking out, I'm a lad from Rotherham that's gone through all that, and I'm now playing in the World Cup for my country. Man, honestly, I had like total body goosebumps.
Really?
It was an unreal feeling.
And when you think back now, what moment do you see in your head
Of
that day?
That day, the walk out. Yeah.
Coming out the tunnel.
Coming out of the tunnel and then walking up and then lining up.
And
then the
who were you
national
next
anthem
to?
playing. Probably Tony Adams. Yeah.
He was a decent player.
Who had always been at the side of. Lifted a few trophies next to him and all that sort of stuff.
But at that moment, did you feel you'd proved people wrong or you'd proved yourself right?
I would say I proved people wrong. Just so proud to get there.
Yeah.
And this is after Euro 96, don't forget. So I'd done all right, did all right there. But that feeling of like playing in that World Cup, and I tell this story because I'm involved at Arsenal. I go in 1 day a week with the young goalkeepers. So sometimes I'm with the under-18s or I'm with the under-21s. And along that journey at the end of the season, some of them lads aren't getting contracts.
Yeah.
And I can have a little chat with them and say, look at my pathway. And they're like, wow, what do you mean? I was like, well, I was released at 19. They're like, what? And they can't believe it, that. And I said to them, as much as you feel it's over now, there's another chance.
But were you trying to prove, like, who was it you were trying to prove wrong? Was it Eddie Gray?
A little bit, yeah. It's always Eddie, and I've met him since and, we've had a laugh about it. And the funny story about all this, with Eddie and proving him wrong and blah, 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 is that my mum and dad still live in Rotherham. So they go out Sunday lunches in Yorkshire and then they went into a pub and they saw Eddie in the corner having his Sunday lunch, and my mum says, "Oh my God, I'm going to say hello." And my dad's going, "Don't go over." Oh, this was a few years ago. When I was still playing, for Arsenal, and she went over. She says, "Oh well, hello Eddie. I'm David Seaman's mum. Do you remember our David?" and he laughed, and he was great with it. She said that he says, "Yeah, I know." He said, "But I had to get a goalkeeper in and." Blah, blah, blah.
There's probably, though, a real value in what Eddie did. And you should almost get to the point where you're grateful for the fact that he made that decision because it lit a fire in you.
Exactly.
That obviously took you all the way to the top.
Yeah. And it's hard to accept that, if I'm honest, even now. Really? Because the way that I felt then was like, I was so devastated. I cried on my own driving home. That's how much it affected me. The biggest motivation comes back again. Prove them wrong.
Let's talk a little bit about your dad. I wonder whether his bowel cancer diagnosis was almost that first kind of awareness of mortality for you.
Yeah, because you think that your parents are like bulletproof.
Yeah.
You know, and then when he was diagnosed, he got no symptoms. You know, and there was a national screening program. There was a little test that came through in the post. And my dad normally would, I'm not doing that. I don't need that. There's nothing wrong. But I don't know why. And I'll ask him, I need to ask him this actually. I was just like, well, why did you do it?
Yeah.
What made you change your mind to do it?
And how old was he at the time?
He would be 65.
Right.
And he did the test and he's obviously sent it away. And then he came back and they were like, you need to come in. And they scanned him and everything. And he'd got a 2-inch diameter lump in his bowel. And he'd had no symptoms whatsoever.
And did he tell you about it when he got the call?
He told us that, you know, that he got that and that he was going to have an operation. You know, he didn't know until they went in as to what they would have to do, you know, because whether it means, you know, a colostomy bag or whatever, you know, all the things that goes along with bowel cancer. He'd not got any idea really. Luckily, because they caught it early, you know, and all the stats say, you know, if there is any symptoms at all, try and get it checked out, because the earlier that you can get it, the prevention is so much higher. You know, and with my dad, I think it was about a third of his bowel removed, and that was it. He didn't have chemo. Right. He didn't have any radiotherapy or anything like that. You know, obviously he had different tablets and things, and he still rattles around now on about 20 tablets a day. But you know, we're down 15 years down the line or more.
And because it's not rare now, as we know, a cancer diagnosis, but there was something in that inspired you to work with the Bobby Moore Fund to help raise awareness of bowel cancer. Why did you decide that you wanted to talk about it?
Well, because previously to my dad being diagnosed, my mother-in-law died of bowel cancer.
Right.
And, you know, that was like a real shock.
Yeah.
Because she, you know, like she always seemed healthy, you know, but then, you know, she was the type of lady that she didn't want to have any treatment or anything, you know, and just not gave up, but I don't know, you know, just didn't want to go through all the chemo and all that sort of
Which
thing.
is understandable for some people.
And then it took her away. You know, so then that was like my first experience of it, you know, and how quick it can happen.
Yeah.
And she was a nurse as well, you know, so she knew what was going on. You know, so then that's when I started getting involved a little bit, and then obviously then my dad getting it, you know, and then I met Stephanie, and you know, it was just one of those things where, you know, I really wanted to do this because I'm now really passionate about it.
Stephanie's amazing. What about Bobby? Did you ever meet Bobby?
Yeah, I did once.
No way.
Yeah, I know. But obviously before, you know, everybody knew that he was ill or anything like that, you know, and I remember I think it was Arsenal, and we played away at West Ham's ground at Upton Park, or the bowling, I don't know which one West Ham fans call it. Yeah. But and I remember after the game, I'd been in the bar and I came down the steps and he was there at the bottom of the steps. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, just so excited to go and shake his hand. You know, and I've done that with like quite a few, you know, like even if they don't know me, I don't care. I'm still going to go in and shake their hand. I've done it with Arnold Palmer.
Okay.
Yeah, in Florida, you know, the one I missed was Tiger. Tiger walked past me. I didn't shake his hand. But with Bobby, it was just, wow. You know, he's like, he won the World Cup as captain for England.
What did you say to him, or what did he say to you?
I just said to him, it's a pleasure to meet you, you know, and he was like, oh, no, it's great. He said, well played today. You know, you deserved it. And it was usual 3 points at West Ham.
I bet you didn't say that to him.
I did
not. You wimp. I've loved that. I've loved sort of reminiscing. Have you?
Yeah, I do. You know, because that's all I do now. You know, my playing days are over. You know, I've recently just done Soccer Aid, and I don't even play in that anymore. Yeah. You know, because I know that it's done. You know, and like when you mentioned about Harry's Heroes, that's the last time that I played. Really? In the second series of that, I remember making a save, and it just popped out, and I tried to get up, and it was like, and I was like, oh my God, this feels so bad. Yeah.
But I've often wondered about, like, you're 63 coming up for this year, and we're talking about events that took place 20, 30 years ago. And I'm interested that, like, does that frustrate you to think about that time now, and that's all people want to talk to you about, as opposed to the man you are today?
No, it's a mixture, because of, of what I did.
Yeah.
And then of what I've done since I retired as well, like dancing on ice and stuff like that, and mass dancer and things, all them sort of things. I want to say I enjoyed doing them. Dancing on ice was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life.
Because
I'm out of my comfort zone. I could skate, right? Because I used to skate as a kid, but I was never taught. I used to go to the local rink, trying to impress the girls as you do and all that in Sheffield. And I knew I could skate, but the dancing side of it, I don't like dancing at all. I know I can't dance. I know I can't sing. And I don't do it. I don't even do it even when I've had a few pints. So doing that, my love for ice skating overtook the realization of wearing lycra and sequins and makeup and, but waiting in the tunnel of Dancing on Ice live for the second show. The first show was still pretty daunting, but we didn't know how many people were going to watch it. I got through. We found out the viewing figures peaked at like 14.4 million. And we were like, oh my God. Then the real, so like I'm waiting in the tunnel, like nervous as anything.
You played in World Cups. I'm amazed that you were impacted in that way.
Like, it's skating and I'm totally out of my comfort zone. And your mouth is like so dry. You go out and you have to stop in the middle. Even that can be hard at some, for some people. And then you present and smile and your mouth's that dry, your top lip stays up there, and you're like, oh, what is going on? Then you have a little wobble in your routine and it's just scary. But that's, some people talk about that rather than my football career.
Yeah.
I've even had, you're that guy from Dancing on Ice. Not David Seaman, the ex-footballer.
Yeah.
But that's cool in some ways, isn't it?
It is.
Did you ever have identity issues when you retired and a lacking purpose or anything?
No, I took the disguise off. I got rid of the tash and ponytail, didn't I? but the voice still stayed the same.
Did you do that on purpose, the tash and the ponytail?
The ponytail came off for Bobby Moore. I did that live on TV. Charles Worthington just snipped it off. We got money for that. And it's the same, like my charity work, I'm passionate about that. Obviously the Bobby Moore Fund and Cancer Research UK, Willow, Bob Wilson's charity as well. Me and my wife Frankie are co-presidents of that now.
Oh, right.
With Bob. And then the British Heart Foundation as well, because I even had at the end of my career, like you get like a heart murmur, like a irregular heartbeat. That was kicking in at the end of my career as well. So that was, another charity and another thing that I wanted to get involved in, but like with the Bobby Moore Fund stuff, it was the cold, of life and death, and I'd seen that take family members away.
And how did you find, like, adjusting to civilian life, we'll call it? Like, because we've spoken to, like, when Chris Hoy, do you remember when Chris said that when he became a dad, he said, I'd always been the number one in my family. My needs were the most important. And then becoming a dad, he said I got relegated to number 3 overnight. And like, it's quite a selfish world that you have to inhabit professionally. So what were the kind of adjustments you had to make?
Well, it wasn't children, because I'd had children all the way through, because I've got 40-year-olds, so by 22, 23, I'd got 2 kids. So I'd spent a lot of my time with my football career along with raising children and raising a family. It was strange, like going to it, not having everything done for you, like by the club. When you're going abroad and stuff, like I'd go away with the family and I'd be like, oh yeah, but we just walk through. And like, no, you've got to go through that bit there and then that bit there, or just little things. Yeah, but it wasn't massively different, And I think the best thing for me was that I was ready to retire. Yeah, so I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to having more time to go fishing and do my golf, play a bit of golf and then do my charity work. And it's weird, and even like doing the coaching. So the coaching side of it came a little bit later on. And the reason is that I started to do my badges. And back then, when I was doing it, I got told while I was on the course that I had to do my outfield coaching badge before I could do my goalkeeping badge. And that, like, me being stubborn Yorkshireman, like, just rubbed me up this total, I was like, I'm not doing it. And I just left it, and then Ray Clements set up this thing where you could get a goalkeeping diploma, which enabled ex-goalkeepers that were at clubs to carry on coaching because they got this qualification. Nothing to do with how good they were.
I think you earned your diploma in that Arsenal shirt or that.
Exactly.
What an interesting conversation. Brilliant. Honestly, so interesting. Before we finish, we've got a few quickfire questions, if you would allow us.
Yeah, please.
Through all the things you've learned and the career you've had, what are the 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you think matter the most?
Straight away, lateness.
Can't
Hate
stand
lateness.
Right.
Yeah. Always look after your teammates.
Yeah.
And when you win, really celebrate.
Love that.
What advice would you give to a teenage David just starting out?
I want to say believe in your dreams, because, I dreamt of playing for England and being a professional footballer. And then then when that, along that path, along that journey that I had, where there was a lot of some downs and then a massive down being released to get where I was a great dream.
What's been your biggest strength?
Being really strong mentally, because as a goalkeeper you need to be, because you can make that mistake in that first 5 minutes, and then can you carry on for the rest of the game by being a goalkeeper, or do you get worse because you're so nervous that then you cost your team again? I've used that a lot, even in like my private life and stuff. There's been times where I've had to really knuckle down.
When we spoke to Petr Cech, he spoke about when he was a young boy, he was crippled with the anxiety of, if I make a mistake, I cost my team. And he said all through his career he had the view that the score is always 0-0. Doesn't matter if we're winning 5-0, losing 5-0. The score is always 0-0 was what he'd say. Was there a trick or a technique you used to keep that sense of calm?
No, it was always about winning. It was always like try and win, because I was also good at cricket, because I had that. At 16, I had the choice of going to Yorkshire as a fast bowler or going to Leeds as a goalkeeper. Yes, I was good at cricket, I was good at basketball, but we were always like really successful, so it was always about trying to win things all the time.
So I think sometimes we have people on here and they're having to go through mental gymnastics to be elite performers. They're struggling with self-doubt, they're having to see therapists, they're like going to bed fearful. Like apart from really that England moment, I don't think you've overthought your career, have you? It's not.
No.
You haven't had to go through mental gymnastics to be able to cope with being an England and an Arsenal and a footballing legend. It just kind of happened, right?
Yeah, it did. But I had my dad and Bob. They were like my mentors and my helpers, because he'd been a goalkeeper before. So like whatever he said, I understood. Yeah. And I would sometimes I'd have managers saying stuff to me in the, like George Graham would be, oh, you should have had that cross, blah blah, and I'm like, it would go in there and straight out of there, because he's never been in that situation. But Bob had, so Bob was always there. But then, like you said, though, the mental gymnastics of it, we didn't have people there that could have helped us.
Yes, it wasn't
a thing.
Wasn't talked about.
No.
What about, like, you've been divorced twice, is that right?
Yeah.
I wonder whether, in some ways, that is the cost of the career that you've had, has been the sort of personal life challenges. And I know you're very happily married to Frankie, and having met her a few times, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Better at ice skating than you as well. But I wonder whether that is almost the hidden side of David Seaman that we didn't see in those golden
but then
days.
that's like what I said, like about things that happen in your private life that they still make you mentally stronger. Because you've got to a certain situation where you need to make a decision. What happens? Do you stay or do you leave, or whatever you do, you've got to go for it. And in my head, that's the reasons why. I was, but then I feel that I was strong enough to make those decisions, and for me, they were the right decisions.
Quite taken with your relationship with Bob Wilson. I mean, was it when you were at QPR that you first met him?
Yes.
So what was it that drew you towards him, that made you trust him so deeply?
Well, what it was, so Don Howe was the coach at QPR, one of the coaches, and he'd spoken to Bob and asked if he would come in and give me some lessons. Lessons? It's weird. Like come and coach me for QPR, and he would come in once a week while he was still at Arsenal as well.
Right.
Yeah, so obviously he was going back and telling George that, this goal is not bad.
Yeah.
And then, but I don't know, it was just a relationship that we had. But then again, it's the fact that Bob played for Arsenal. You know, and as he told me, he was the first goalkeeper to win the double for Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me that all the time. And even to the point where, like cup finals or like deciding matches to win a league or whatever, he always leave like a little note, like when I used to get changed, or a pair of his gloves. You know, if I can do it in these gloves, look what you can do in yours. And these like sort of little motivational snippets.
That's amazing.
That were brilliant, you know. And, you know, and then even like when his daughter, Anna, was diagnosed with cancer, you know, like a little bit, like do it for Anna and all that sort of stuff. And it was he was so good at that, the motivational side of it. Whereas technically, it wasn't really there for that. He was there to make sure that I was right in my head and that I had everything covered in the week in training. And then, or he would even ask me, he says like, is there something you want to work on this week? You know, if a certain situation had happened in a game where I'd not done it right, I'd be like, oh, let's just cover that a bit, just get it out of there.
Yeah.
And then move on. He was so good at that. You with Bob, and I didn't really get it from many others, goalkeeping coaches, that I could gain confidence through training.
Who do you still maintain is the best striker you faced?
Brazilian Ronaldo.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't know what he was going to do. You know, and I always used to watch on TV, you know, different strikers, see what they do. And he had the little toe poke in it. He had the shot where he hardly had any backlift. And he'd make little side footers or he'd hit it with pace. You know, and even in the game, you know, against Brazil, you know, I would, like 1v1, I saved a couple with him. Nobody remembers that. You know,
yeah.
There was a few other saves, you know, but him that I've played against, I would say, him and Ronaldinho obviously are, you know, they're
pretty good players.
Decent, aren't they?
And greatest weakness?
Yeah.
I can be quite stubborn. And is that a weakness?
Can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't always agree with people.
And so finally, David, what's your golden rule to living a high performance life?
You've got to enjoy it. You've got to love doing what you're doing. Because I loved being a goalkeeper. Even from going into the playground as a probably 9 or 10-year-old, joining with the big boys that were playing football, where I wasn't allowed to go over this white line until I was old enough, going up to them, can I come and play football? They're like, oh yeah, you're tall, go in goal. You know, so I gained confidence from them praising me because I was stopping the ball, but then I just loved being in goal. So I'd be like, I'll go in goal. So it was just the love of being a goalkeeper, you know, and I get people coming now to me saying, oh yeah, I really like being a goalkeeper, but I like being striker as well. I'm like, you need to love it. You need to absolutely love what you're doing.
Well, listen, when you've been successful at something and the caps behind you are proof of that, and you've loved it as well, well, you've won at life, and that's a pretty rare thing. So thank you so much for coming on and
pleasure
sharing your story with us.
Absolute pleasure. Loved
Top
it.
man.
Loved it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Damien.
Jay.
I actually like David's simplistic approach to elite performance. I think sometimes we get carried away with thinking there has to be more going on. There has to be a hidden depth. There has to be a secret that we can uncover on this podcast. But actually, well, I just played football and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And how often, maybe the two are linked, are we joined by guests who haven't enjoyed the journey and they've thought it and overthought it and cogitated on it for hours and hours. And he's like, well, I played football and loved it. He's the winner.
Brilliant, isn't it? I like it sometimes when we get a bit of a swipe off a guest, you know, like when we had Colin Bell on and he was like, you two lads keep going on about emotion.
Yeah, the
I just
pilot,
got on with the
World War II
job.
pilot,
yeah, 105-year-old Colin gave us a bit of a chastening experience to go. Sometimes you just have to do your job. And like, while David didn't quite swipe us like Colin did, I like the idea of exactly as you say, sometimes it's just a case of I enjoyed what I did.
Yeah.
I persevered until I got where I wanted to. And I generally dealt with it all pretty well.
And it wasn't complicated.
Yeah.
And high performance doesn't always need to be complicated.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because, you know, to give people an insight into the way that these things work, you know, if we're recording a number of guests in a day, I might focus on some, you might focus on others in terms of the prep. And you've done a lot of the prep for this conversation. And actually I was looking, once the interview began, I was looking through some of the questions that you'd diligently worked on thinking, no, because loads of them were about like the hidden cost of playing for England.
Yeah, or talking about like what lessons did you learn from your dad that you had to discard? And you go, well, actually, his dad sounds a pretty brilliant character
Yeah.
that just sort of kept him on the straight and narrow, was a mentor and lifted him up when he needed it. You know, sometimes that idea of, I just wanted to prove somebody wrong that doubted me, and that was enough fuel to sustain a career. There's your answer. You know, for some people that works.
Yeah, but there was also loads of good stuff in there. I love the fact that he felt like really hurt, obviously, by Eddie Gray, and then spent years trying to prove him wrong. Fantastic, and it worked. Well done. I loved his stories about Arsene Wenger and the fact that Arsene never really came in and bawled them out. He just spoke very briefly about tactics, and that was enough.
I love that. I love you know what I was thinking of when he was telling us about Wenger coming in was our conversation with Steve Hansen of, don't come in with rules. Just come in and just show them a better way. Don't come in and tell them, this is the Tuesday Club's banned. Just, don't ban it. Just see the consequences of actually not doing it because others are not doing it and I want to work you hard. So he didn't have to come in and be a dictator. He could just come in and seduce these guys to follow him.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as well. By the way, if you check out YouTube, you can see the moment that David Seaman and I talked about those 3 shirts that he brought in and also the 2 England caps that he brought with him as well. So if you want to see that conversation, you can find it on YouTube. There'll be the link in the description to this episode. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit follow, please subscribe, and we'll see you again for another episode of High Performance.